They called him the most dangerous man in Italy. Not because he commanded armies or controlled vast fortunes, but because he understood something that terrified the powerful elite of his time. While kings and princes played games of honor and virtue, Niccolò Machiavelli was dissecting the cold mathematics of power itself. He saw through the theater, past the performances, straight into the dark machinery that actually moves the world. 500 years later, his insights are more relevant than ever. Because here's what most people don't realize about power. It hasn't changed. The platforms have shifted from royal courts to corporate boardrooms, from battlefield strategies to social media campaigns. But the fundamental rules remain exactly the same. The same psychological triggers that toppled dynasties now determine who rises and who falls in our modern world. Today, we're living through what Machiavelli would recognize instantly. A time when appearances matter more than substance, where perception shapes reality, and where the skillful manipulation of image can build or destroy reputations overnight. The players have changed, but the game remains unchanged, and if you understand the rules, you don't just survive in this environment, you dominate it. This isn't about becoming some cartoon villain. This is about recognizing that power dynamics exist whether you acknowledge them or not. The question isn't whether you'll encounter these forces. The question is whether you'll be prepared when you do. Whether you'll be the one making the moves or the one being moved. Machiavelli wrote his masterpiece not as a celebration of cruelty, but as a survival manual for navigating a world where good intentions alone guarantee nothing. He understood that in the real arena of human ambition, the noble-hearted often finish last not because they lack virtue, but because they refuse to see the game being played around them. So let me walk you through 15 principles that would make Machiavelli the most formidable operator in today's world. These aren't just historical curiosities. They're active strategies being deployed right now by the most successful people you can think of. The difference is they're not advertising it. The first rule is the foundation everything else builds upon. Never reveal your true strength until you're ready to use it. In Machiavelli's time, this meant concealing the size of your army, the loyalty of your allies, the depth of your resources. Today, it means something far more sophisticated. It means managing your reputation like a strategic asset. Think about the most powerful people you know. Really powerful people. They don't broadcast their capabilities. They don't post their networking connections on social media. They don't announce their next moves in advance. Why? Because mystery creates leverage. When people can't fully measure what you're capable of, they're forced to respect what you might be capable of. This principle extends beyond just keeping secrets. It's about strategic revelation. You show just enough competence to be taken seriously, but never enough to be fully understood. You demonstrate value without displaying your entire hand. Because once someone knows exactly what you can do, they know exactly what you can't do, and that knowledge becomes their advantage. The second rule cuts even deeper. Master the art of strategic patience. Machiavelli understood that timing isn't just important in power plays. Timing is everything. The same action taken too early makes you look desperate. Taken too late makes taken at precisely our instant you look reactive. But you look inevitable. The right moment makes gratification culture, this patience, in power. While everyone else is rushing, becomes a super to respond, to react, to get their word in. You're watching. You're calculating. You're waiting for the moment when your move will have maximum impact with minimum resistance. This isn't procrastination. This is precision. Watch how the most successful people handle conflicts. They don't jump into every argument. They don't respond to every provocation. They wait until they can respond from a position of strength at a time when their response will be most devastating. They understand that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing, until the moment comes when doing something will change everything. The third rule would revolutionize how you handle relationships. Treat loyalty as currency, not emotion. Machiavelli saw loyalty not as a feeling, but as an exchange. People remain loyal as long as the benefits of loyalty outweigh the benefits of betrayal. This sounds cynical until you realize it's simply realistic. This doesn't mean you become cold or manipulative. It means you become strategic about how you build and maintain alliances. You make sure that supporting you is more valuable than opposing you. You create situations where your success becomes intertwined with other people's success. You build networks where betraying you would cost more than it would gain. The modern application is subtle, but powerful. You don't just help people. You help people in ways that make them invested in your continued success. You don't just offer value. You offer value that becomes increasingly difficult to replace. You create dependencies that feel like partnerships, obligations that feel like opportunities. Rule 4 addresses something crucial in our attention economy. Control the narrative, never defend against it. In Machiavelli's era, reputation was everything because communication was limited. Today, reputation is everything because communication is unlimited. The sheer volume of information means that whoever frames the story first often controls how it's understood. This means you don't wait for problems to develop before you address them. You shape perceptions proactively. You define yourself before others define you. You create the context in which your actions will be interpreted. And when attacks come, you don't defend. You redirect. You reframe. You make the conversation about something else entirely. The defensive position is always the weaker position because it accepts the attacker's framing. Instead of denying accusations, you shift the entire discussion. Instead of justifying your actions, you question their motives. Instead of playing by their rules, you change the game entirely. Rule 5 gets to the heart of modern leadership. Appear accessible while remaining unreachable. Machiavelli knew that leaders must be close enough to be respected but distant enough to be revered. Too much familiarity breeds contempt. Too much distance breeds irrelevance. The skill is finding the perfect balance. In today's world, this translates to strategic availability. You're visible enough to maintain relationships, but not so available that people take your time for granted. You share enough of yourself to seem authentic, but not so much that you lose your mystique. You're helpful enough to be valued, but selective enough that your help carries weight. This isn't about being fake or aloof. It's about understanding that accessibility is a resource that loses value when it's unlimited. When you're always available, people stop appreciating your availability. When you're selective about your time and attention, both become more valuable. The 6th rule would transform how you approach competition. Never compete directly when you can compete indirectly. Machiavelli understood that head-to-head confrontations are expensive, risky, and often unnecessary. The superior strategy is to make your competition irrelevant, rather to defeat them out than trying right. This means changing the rules of the game instead of trying to win by the existing rules. It means creating new categories instead of fighting for market share in old ones. It means making your unique strengths the new standard rather than trying to match someone else's strengths. In practical terms, this could mean focusing on different metrics of success, targeting different audiences, or solving problems in completely different ways. While others are fighting over the same territory, you're discovering new territory entirely. By the time they realize what you've done, you're already established in a space they didn't even know existed. The 7th rule reveals why some people seem untouchable while others crumble at the first sign of pressure. Master the power of selective vulnerability. Machiavelli recognized that showing weakness isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the most sophisticated form of strength, but the key word here is selective. Most people either reveal too much or reveal nothing at all. They're either completely transparent or completely closed off. Both approaches fail because they're predictable. True power comes from controlling exactly what people see and when they see it. You reveal just enough humanity to be relatable, just enough struggle to be credible, but never enough to be exploitable. This works because it creates emotional investment without creating emotional liability. People feel connected to you because they've seen behind the curtain, but they haven't seen enough to use that knowledge against you. You've given them the illusion of intimacy without the reality of vulnerability. The 8th rule would change how you handle information forever. Treat knowledge like classified intelligence. In Machiavelli's world, information was power because it was scarce. Today, information is power because it's overwhelming. Everyone has access to everything, which means the real advantage comes from knowing what matters and what doesn't. This isn't about hoarding secrets. It's about understanding the strategic value of information. Some knowledge is more valuable when shared. Some is more valuable when withheld. Some becomes worthless the moment everyone has it, while other information increases in value as more people possess it. The modern master of this principle doesn't just collect information. They understand the life cycle of information. They know when to be the first to share something and when to be the last. They recognize which insights become more powerful through distribution and which lose their edge the moment they're revealed. Rule 9 addresses something that destroys more careers and relationships than any external enemy ever could. Never let success make you predictable. Machiavelli observed that nothing is more dangerous than your own patterns. The strategies that brought you success become the very weaknesses that ensure your downfall if you rely on them too heavily. This principle cuts against every instinct we have. When something works, we want to repeat it. When we find a formula for success, we want to apply it everywhere. But predictability is the enemy of power because predictable people can be managed, manipulated, and eventually replaced. The solution isn't to be random or chaotic, it's to be strategically unpredictable. You maintain core principles while varying your methods. You stay true to your values while adapting your tactics. You keep people guessing about your next move without making them question your fundamental character. The 10th rule would revolutionize how you build influence. Create value that can't be replicated. Machiavelli understood that true security comes not from being needed, but from being irreplaceable. Anyone can make themselves useful. Only the strategic few make themselves indispensable. This goes beyond just being good at what you do. It's about becoming good at things that only you can do. It's about developing a unique combination of skills, relationships, and perspectives that would be impossible for someone else to recreate. It's about building moats around your position that get deeper over time rather than shallower. In practice, this means you don't just accumulate expertise. You accumulate unique expertise. You don't just build networks. You become the connection point between networks that wouldn't otherwise intersect. You don't just solve problems. You solve problems in ways that reveal new problems only you're positioned to address. Rule 11 gets to the core of how power actually operates in the modern world. Understand that perception shapes reality more than reality shapes perception. Machiavelli lived in an age where image and substance were clearly distinct. Today they've become inseparable. The line between what you are and what people believe you are has blurred beyond recognition. This doesn't mean you abandon authenticity for performance. It means you recognize that authenticity itself is performed. Everything you do communicates something about who you are, whether you intend it to or not. The question isn't whether you're managing your image. The question is whether you're managing it consciously or letting it manage itself. The sophisticated approach is to align your reality with your desired perception gradually over time. You don't fake competence until you develop it. You develop competence in ways that naturally create the perception you want. You don't pretend to have qualities you lack. You acquire those qualities while ensuring people notice the acquisition. The 12th rule addresses the most dangerous trap that successful people fall into. Never become dependent on the systems that made you powerful. Machiavelli saw countless leaders destroyed not by external enemies but by changes in the very structures that had elevated them. The rules that brought them to power became obsolete, and their power vanished with those rules. Today, this principle is more critical than ever. Industries transform overnight. Technologies that seemed permanent become museum pieces. Social norms that felt eternal suddenly reverse. The people who survive and thrive are those who build their power on foundations that transcend any single system or structure. This means developing portable skills rather than position-dependent advantages. It means building relationships that exist independent of institutional frameworks. It means creating value that remains valuable regardless of changing circumstances. You become powerful within systems without becoming dependent on those systems for your power. The 13th rule separates those who merely accumulate power from those who wield it masterfully. Learn to make others feel powerful while you remain in control. Machiavelli recognized that the most effective form of dominance doesn't feel like dominance at all. The person being influenced believes they're making their own decisions, pursuing their own interests, acting on their own insights. This is the highest form of strategic thinking. You don't force people into submission. You create conditions where submission feels like empowerment. You don't demand loyalty. You make loyalty feel like the smart choice. You don't impose your will. You shape circumstances so that your will becomes their preference. In modern contexts, this translates to giving people ownership over ideas you've planted, credit for solutions you've guided them toward, recognition for outcomes you've orchestrated. The art is in the invisibility. When done correctly, people walk away feeling more capable, more confident, more in control than when they started. They have no idea they've been influenced because the influence felt like insight. This approach builds genuine allegiance because people protect what they believe they've created. They defend decisions they think were their own. They remain loyal to directions they believe they chose. You gain all the benefits of control while avoiding the resentment that comes with obvious manipulation. Rule 14 reveals why some people command respect effortlessly, while others struggle to be taken seriously despite obvious competence. Master the distinction between being feared and being threatening. Machiavelli's most misunderstood principle wasn't about cruelty or intimidation. It was about commanding the right kind of respect. Being threatening makes people want to eliminate you. Being feared makes people want to avoid disappointing you. The difference is subtle but crucial. Threatening behavior creates enemies. Fearsome presence creates careful allies. One invites attack, the other invites cooperation. True power inspires caution without inspiring hostility. People become more thoughtful in their interactions with you, more careful about their commitments, more respectful of your boundaries. But this happens not because they're afraid of what you might do to them, but because they respect what you're capable of achieving. This kind of influence emerges from demonstrated competence, consistent follow-through, and a reputation for proportional responses. You don't need to raise your voice because your quiet words carry weight. You don't need to make threats because your track record speaks for itself. People fear disappointing you not because of potential punishment, but because of the respect they've developed for your judgment. The 15th and final rule encompasses everything Machiavelli understood about the ultimate nature of power itself. Recognize that true power is the ability to shape reality without anyone realizing you're shaping it. This is the master principle that governs all others. Power at its highest level is invisible power. When you've truly mastered these principles, your influence becomes environmental rather than directional. You don't push people toward outcomes. You create conditions where those outcomes become inevitable. You don't argue for your position. You make your position the obvious conclusion. You don't demand change. You make change feel necessary, natural, overdue. This level of influence requires patience, precision, and perfect understanding of human psychology. You're not manipulating individual decisions, you're architecting entire contexts. You're not winning arguments. You're determining what gets argued about. You're not controlling people. You're controlling the factors that control people. The most sophisticated practitioners of this principle shape cultures, industries, entire ways of thinking without leaving fingerprints on the process. Their ideas become conventional wisdom. Their preferences become market trends. Their vision becomes the future everyone thought was inevitable. But here's what Machiavelli would warn you about as you develop these capabilities. Power without purpose becomes its own prison. The ability to influence becomes meaningless if you don't know what you want to achieve. The capacity to shape reality loses its value if you have no vision of what reality should become. The ultimate irony is that mastering these principles changes you in ways you can't predict. You begin to see the mechanics behind every interaction, the strategy beneath every relationship, the power dynamics in every situation. This clarity is both a gift and a burden. You gain the ability to navigate any environment, but you lose the innocence that makes some experiences meaningful. Machiavelli himself understood this paradox. His insights into power came at the cost of ever again experiencing power naively. He could see through every performance because he understood how all performances work. He could predict political outcomes because he recognized the patterns that govern political behavior. But this knowledge isolated him from the very world he understood so perfectly. Today, as you apply these principles, you'll face the same choice Machiavelli faced. Do you use this understanding while, or do you become to build something worth consumed by the game itself? Do you employ these tools in service of something larger than your own advancement? Or do you let the pursuit of power become your only purpose? The answer determines not just your success, but your significance. Because ultimately, Machiavelli's greatest insight wasn't about accumulating power. It was about recognizing that power without direction is just sophisticated chaos. The most dangerous person isn't the one who can manipulate any situation. It's the one who can manipulate any situation in service of a vision that makes the world more interesting, more dynamic, more alive. These 15 rules aren't just about gaining influence. They're about wielding influence responsibly in a world that desperately needs people who understand how power really works. Because whether you choose to engage with these dynamics or not, they're operating around you every moment of every day. The only question is whether you'll be conscious of them or unconscious, deliberate or reactive, strategic or simply swept along by forces you never bothered to understand. The world hasn't changed since Machiavelli's time. Only the costumes have gotten more sophisticated. While everyone else argues about fairness, authenticity, and good intentions, the real players are quietly applying these 15 principles to reshape reality itself. They're not advertising their methods because power shared is power diminished. You now possess the same framework that built empires and toppled kingdoms. The question isn't whether these forces exist. They operate whether you acknowledge them or not. The question is whether you'll master them or remain their victim. Because in the end, Machiavelli's greatest truth remains unchanged. Those who understand the game control it, while those who ignore it get controlled by it.